Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. We're talking business today, women and business. We're talking to Shauna Yeldell, and she is the Director of Lending and Operations for the Women's Opportunity Resource Center. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Shauna, most of the businesses in the United States are small businesses.
Yes.
So we kind of need to know what to do if you want to start a business, if you have a business and you want that business to grow. And there's a lot of information out here that women don't know. That's why I was anxious to have you on to kind of fill in some of those gaps. You have this idea, but there's a lot of stuff you don't know, for example, when it comes to financing.
Sure. Well, again, I'm delighted to be here, and primarily all of my work is with startups and early stage businesses. And so one of the things that we recommend initially is that the business owner get as much education and training as they can. So we have our own entrepreneurial training program, and it walks you through the steps of how do you establish your business? How do you want it formed? Do you want an LLC? Do you want an S Corp? And what are those differences? And how do they make a difference in terms of your taxation situation? We also provide them with guidance along with, marketing, because some of our business owners think, well, all I have to do is open the doors and people come. Well, as well as I do, that's not quite true. That's not how it works. So helping them understand, you have to have a target market. It's great if there are other individuals or corporations that actually do business with you, but you have to have a target. And so with that target, how are you focusing on that target audience? So we help people, understand that. And so we utilize a lot of resources that are public library, and just what will it take to establish your business in terms of licensing and insurance and those types of things.
And those are little things you don't think about when you, as a small business owner, those are little things you don't think about when you've got the idea of how to start a business. You don't think about, do I want to be an LLC? There's just a lot of things that go into it that I kind of had to learn just along the way.
Correct.
I didn't know who to turn to or what resources were available. And one of the major concerns for people interested in developing a small business, money. How do I get the financing to start my business?
Sure. So that's the first step, is even if you haven't experienced or gone through or matriculated through our training program, we like to see that you have done something. So some entrepreneurial training program, because when you get to the phase of needing capital, some of the questions that we're going to ask will require that you do that. So you can do it sooner, or whether you can do it later. But at some point, you'll need to establish, are you going to have an LLC? What is your target market? What have you done to test that market? So all of those questions will be asked when you get to the point where I want to borrow this much money. Have you pursued, other types of angel investors? Have you looked at Kiva? Have you looked at those sources? When borrowers come to us, those are the questions that we ask. So that's why I started with the training program that will actually, save you some time when you get to the stage of actually applying for the loan.
Why do women and minorities have a difficult time when it comes to borrowing from banks, for example? Because the first place you think of, oh, I'll go to the bank.
Right.
There are other resources, but why is it so difficult when it comes to banks?
That's an excellent question. Banks are regulated, heavily regulated. And so particularly for small business, they have a really tough time really responding to the small business marketplace because they're so driven by regulation, which basically is designed to make everything fair, i.e. credit scores. So if this person has a credit score of 530 and another person has a credit score of 730, how do you justify extending the loan to this person? They may have a very good story, very good narrative, but if their score is 530, I can't really justify that in the banking and regulated environment without being, under a lot of criticism. So small business has always been very tough. And my background is commercial lending, so I'm saying this from experience. I turned down almost every small applicant startups, almost every one of them without fail. And it was due to credit scores, not understanding how they're calculated. And then there's just life. Life happens. There's divorce, there's illness, and things that, you know, deplete your personal savings so that you're looking for capital. But usually when you're looking for it and you have those, you know, credit scores or credit has been impaired by some, you know, event, it's just very, very difficult for banks. The other thing is collateral. Most startups don't have a lot of collateral. Those that do, the bank is basically loaning because of that collateral. They're looking at the secondary source of repayment. Most startups don't have that. So because of those are the largest factors that I saw as a commercial lender, that we couldn't go any further.
How are you an option, organizations like yours?
Absolutely. So we are an alternative, and we actually work with banks because they know that is really a struggle for them. So startups and early stage businesses are really a struggle. So we try and build relationships with the larger commercial banks so that they will refer us clients that they feel good about, and they feel this is a very good business idea, this is a strong person in terms of character. We just, through our parameters, we just can't loan them the money. Can you help them? And so we look for those opportunities because they're really good opportunities. The banker has viewed it from the lens of a banker, so now they just need the funding.
So what are some of the ways to build this cash?
So one of the things that we, in addition to the savings and the lending and the training programs, is we actually have savings programs. And savings programs are very key because you really want to establish behaviors of savings, even if it's a small amount, because I think the study was 2017, Prosperity Now, that 80% of the population doesn't have $400 in savings. So that's 2 spare tires that people don't have cash. If they have a flat tire, they're in a really, really bad situation. So we want to create a situation where people begin to create the habit of savings. So,
and how do you do that?
Well, in some cases, we actually have match savings programs called IDAs, Individual Development Accounts, and also FSAs, which are Family Savings Accounts. And there are certain governmental sources that do match funding. So that's an incentive. If you save $1, I match $1. So that's one incentive. And our funding sources are, you know, dwindling. Unfortunately, for those types of programs. But the reason they're so important is because if you establish that pattern of savings, you save for a goal, but then if you're in the habit of it, then it becomes a part of what you do. You know?
And if you make something a habit over time, then that's just because you don't even think about that money. You don't even miss it. It's just something you do.
Absolutely. So that's one of the ways. And then the other way, again, is small business. I mean, I happen to believe that small business, micro, first of all, you have to start somewhere. But in terms of really catching up with, you know, net worth of some of our peers, you know, small business is a way to go. You can really see people begin to go from you know low to moderate income to really middle income by being business owners.
And especially, I had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how getting women to get into small businesses in third world countries, that is the key to them getting out of poverty.
Absolutely. And not just poverty, I mean, it's self-sufficiency. I mean, they are living from hand to mouth. So to get them any type of leverage where they can begin to save, begin to provide for their families is so key. So, you know, micro is probably more prevalent in, you know, developing countries than here in the United States, but there's a role for micro in the United States as well. It's just different because we have safety nets. You know, we have you know, SNAP benefits. We have other benefits for people that really have challenges throughout their life. But
can those challenges be overcome? For example, you went to a bank and your credit score is not as good as the next guy's credit score, and you hear this no. There's a yes out there somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we look for ways to be a yes. So where a traditional bank would say no immediately because of credit score, we don't. We just want to understand the story. We want to understand the story before the credit score, and then we want to understand what is your plan going forward. So
how do you market? Like if you're trying to figure out what kind of business you want to go to, how do you market to see if this is going to be prosperous in the area that you're in? How do you kind of do that homework, or should you go to another area? Are there too many of those particular types of businesses in that area? How do you do that? How do you navigate?
Absolutely. Well, you said it. I mean, it's homework. I mean, and as a business owner, you are going to be doing a lot of work. I think that's probably something that people misunderstand about being a business owner. It's 24/7, and you've got to put the work in. You've got to put the work in to study, what is it you're wanting to do? And again, your competitive analysis, whether it's driving around that area, if you're going to be open at night, what's available. I mean, so you've got to put the time in to do the homework. And then you've got to use all the resources that are available. Public library is a great one. It's an absolutely great one, and it's completely free. So, understanding zip codes, incomes from certain zip codes, does that fit for your particular product? Because it makes no sense if the average income is $20,000 and you're selling a product that's going to cost, well above the person or that family's range. So
when you're
that is important.
When you're dealing with business people, what are some of the common businesses that they are interested in?
Sure. So for us, in looking at our loan portfolio, our top 5 industries are hair, skin, and nails, because 80% of our population are women, which is great, and we're Women's Opportunities Resource Center. So hair, skin, and nails, we're seeing a lot of hair braiding. We have a lot of immigrants and asylees in our population, which is great. So they come to us, particularly from the west coast of Africa, with the hair braiding skills. So a lot of them will establish their own braiding salons. We also have hair, skin, and now eyelashes. We're seeing a lot of that with the eyelashes. The next industry is home health care. Because of the aging population, we're seeing a lot of home health care, daycare. The other one, because again, this is a large refugee and asylee population, a lot of restaurants. And then trucking, believe it or not.
What's been the most successful?
I guess from the perspective of really making a difference in terms of household incomes before they establish the business and after, I'd have to say the hair, skin, and nails. Because getting in the right location, to your point, understanding your market, understanding what price point you need to be at in order to be successful, I think the hair, skin, and nails. And there are low barriers to entry, particularly with the hair braiders. It's not very expensive. They get a couple of chairs, they get a space, and they're in business. So unlike some other industries, i.e. trucking or maybe IT, that are a little more costly, you've got to invest into computers and that type of thing. Hair, skin, and nails is quite easy.
How do people access organizations like yours?
So that's a very good question. We are a Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFI. So the easiest thing for your audience to do would be to Google CDFI, and depending upon where they live, they can identify those organizations like ours that receive government money in order to be able to have people access capital. The other one is SBA. So we're, in addition to being a CDFI, we're an SBA micro lender. And what that means is basically the SBA loans us money to be able to loan to our clients. So CDFIs and SBA microlenders would be a great Google place to start. And depending upon where you live, you can find the organization.
When a person walks through your door, what should they have prepared?
So if they're walking through our doors as a loan applicant, it would be really good if they had 3 years of tax returns, because we will ask for that. It would be good to have a business plan, even if it's been established years ago. What we like to see is that, this is not a business plan that you just put on the shelf. We want to see that it was well thought out and that there are modifications, because a true business plan would always have modifications based on what you've done, based on where you are. So we would want to see that. And then any other explanation as to why your credit is what it is, we'd like to see that up front. We'd rather you tell us about it than us find it and then ask. So it's always better to be upfront with those things.
Once the business is started, once how do you keep the business going? Because as you know the statistics of the failure of small businesses, what are some of those pitfalls you don't want to fall into?
Yes, that's an excellent question, because we've seen a lot of our clients get into trouble signing leases. They don't have the expertise to actually view leases and understand them from the lens of legal framework, and there are a lot of loopholes that can really cause people trouble. For example, one of our clients that established a daycare, and they borrowed money for leasehold improvements. Everything was going great. They signed this lease because it was in the perfect spot. They had done their homework, and long story short, because of some of the caveats in the lease, they had done all the improvements and the landlord locked the door.
Is that legal?
True story. Yes. Yes. There was a loophole in the way the lease was written, and you can imagine how devastated they were.
What recourse do you have at that point?
Basically none. None. They were out of business. Plus, to make matters worse, they still had debt. They still owed us debt. So, we tried what we could in terms of negotiating, and this was, quite an unreputable landlord, but, people take advantage of what you don't know.
Okay, so what should you do when you have that lease? Who should you have look over it?
You should absolutely invest in an attorney there, and your CDFIs will have relationships with attorneys that can provide you with that legal set of eyes that you really do need, because they know the market, they understand the market, they know if you're dealing with a landlord that you perhaps should not be, because they do know the market. So those things can really help. But what happens is people get so excited because they have this lease and they rush and they sign it. And you really do need to take a step back and let someone other than yourself, preferably someone with legal background or real estate experience in that particular area, to guide you.
And what are some of the other pitfalls that you're seeing?
The other pitfalls would be not borrowing enough money for what you're looking to do. I've seen that happen. I've seen people, say, well, I really need 20,000, but I can settle for 10. So what happens is you take the 10 and it's not enough. It really is not enough to do what you really need to do. So then you have a double whammy, because now you have debt and you really can't accomplish from a business perspective what you were planning to do with the 20.
So how do you know what's the right amount?
That goes back to homework. You've got to do the homework to determine, pardon me, is this going to be sufficient? If you're doing a marketing campaign, for example, and the marketing campaign basically is going to cost $10,000 to do it right. So you have to really be firm in what you're looking for. And if a bank or an organization such as ours, if you can't get the money that way, what are your other sources? Is it Kiva? Is it family? Is it relatives that you can convince using your business pitch that here's what I want to do, here's where I want to go, Can you make an investment? Can you believe in me so that I can make this investment, because I need that?
You just mentioned marketing. How important is marketing? You get this business and you think people are just going to walk in, and that's not how it works.
No, it is not how it works. And it's so critical not only to do marketing, but to understand what type of market. So if I'm marketing to, millennials, that's very different than marketing to the 50-plus market, because they have different habits. So, 50 plus, they may read the newspaper, they may open emails at 8 a.m. Millennials, maybe not. So you really have to understand that so that your marketing can be laser focused. You can't just send a blanket email. Well, you can, but I don't know that it's as effective as if you've thought about, even the timing of emails and email blast and Facebook posts, things of that nature.
What's the best time to send?
Well, it's really interesting. We work with a branding specialist who, again, has an affinity for startup businesses, so she donates a lot of her time, which is great. But she talks about, that whole population. She has a graphic in terms of what population reading and accessing Facebook and other social media at what times. So when do you need to send out blasts? And I just find it so interesting because...
Me too. Do you send out to someone our age, do you send something out in the morning or do you wait in the evening?
Exactly. I mean, and there, you know, she has a precise methodology in terms of when are people, you know, working people, if they're commuting, they probably are going to access their phone between 5 and 6 o'clock p.m. because they're on the subway or maybe they're, you know, waiting, maybe at lunchtime. And it's a really interesting study. So you really have to dig into your population and their habits and their trends, and then they change. So you have to be on top of it. But I agree with you. The marketing is so key because you could have the greatest business in the world if no one knows about it. That's not going to help.
What's the key to longevity in the business?
I think continual education. I think the ones that I have met that have been very successful, they are continuously investing in the education of their business and continuing to improve, continuing to understand more about the market, you know, taking that business plan and really making it an active, live document. So,
what are the levels of their startup, and then where do we go from there?
So there's startup, there's early stage businesses, there are, I guess, mature, but I think there's several levels to mature businesses. Beyond 5 years is really kind of considered a mature business. If it's startup, you know, that's anywhere from 0 to 12 months, and then 12 months to 36 months is kind of the startup phase. But it's driven a lot by sales. So depending on where sales go from year 1 to year 3, that really kind of determines if it's a mature kind of business. And that way we know, particularly if they're profitable, then that really kind of gives us a sense of, okay, so they figured it out. They kind of know what they're doing. They've been able to be profitable. Now what's the next step? So it really, depending on their profitability and their sales, that's really where we look to see, well, where might they be going over the next
How long does it take
years.
from the actual idea of getting the business to getting things going? Is it a year-long process? Should you take your time? Is it a year long? Is it a couple of years? How long should this whole thing take?
Right. That is so dependent on the type of industry, the individual. But one of the things I've seen that works really well is people that perhaps they have this passion and this is something that they want to do. And they're working full time, but you know, in their spare time and in the evenings and on weekends, you know, I'm working through this idea. I've seen that work very well because you're not under pressure of, I've got to make this work because I've got to replace my income, but you can really take your time and be thoughtful about what it is you want to market. Try it out a little bit informally, you know, and if that works, then that's great. And if not, well, then you have the perspective of, well, I know what doesn't work. So now I can move forward with, let's trying something different. You know, can I bring other individuals into, you know, what it is I'm trying to do? So.
And what about partnering with other
Yes.
people? Is it best to do your own thing, or is it best to partner? What do you need to know about that?
So I think it is a good idea to partner, but it's also a good idea to understand what does that partnership bring. So is that partner bringing an expertise that you don't have? And can you work together? Because I have seen some partnerships that, you know, it was great on the surface, but, you know, once you, and business owners spend a lot of time together.
Yes.
You spend a lot of time together, so you really have to make sure this is a person that you're going to be comfortable spending that amount of time together and make a lot of decisions. So to the extent it can work, that's great.
Because I've seen situations where you have one person is the business, serious person. The other person can do whatever it is you do. For example, this is yoga. She's a good yoga person,
Right.
but she's not a good business person. Right. So you end up, and because you said you spend so much time together, you end up not liking each other very much.
It's possible, yes. It's
so
possible.
As we wrap up the program, you said that you guys are available, and there are other things available as well throughout the country when it comes to what you're doing. And you wanted people to know about what you do.
Yes, absolutely. So we are mission-based and we are nonprofit, which means we have a very limited budget for marketing. So one of the things that's great about your programming is making people aware that we are a resource, we are an alternative, and we are a one-stop shop in that we help people understand, well, here's what's involved in being a business owner. And in some cases, we can even share and create partnerships, mentorships, you know, among clients that have gone through that process. And we like to do that because there's nothing better than a person that has kind of walked where you're going to guide you and say, you probably don't want to do it this way.
And that's one of the things you did for me, is that you tried to pair me with a mentor, someone that I can talk to, someone who's walked the path.
Right.
And that's very important, to have people that you can shoot an idea off of.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, understanding that we are here and that we are very interested in not only creating, but making business owners be successful in any way that we can.
And I was glad to hear at the beginning of the program how you said you deal with all people.
Yes, yes, we do. The refugee and asylee population is a very, very interesting population. They have strong business know-how, ingenuity, but helping them understand how to do business in the United States is very, very interesting because, you know, we're very privileged in this country. We have banks. We have banks that we can trust. That's not always the case from some of our immigrants. You know, you have to save if you want to be able to access things. So they have tremendous savings habits, but they don't necessarily understand the banking system. So we help them, and we help them understand business. And then we also take the person who was laid off, you know, and they don't know, you know, what their next step is. So we walk them through, here's some things you might want to think about. What is your passion? Let's help you figure out, take that passion and create a business opportunity for yourself.
In wrapping up the program, what do you think the future is for women in business?
I think it's exciting. I think the advent of the internet has been the great equalizer because previously, and I've been doing banking a long time, so there were a lot of barriers to entry because of the knowledge. You know, you have to have certain knowledge in order to pursue business opportunities, but now you have the internet. So if you can spell it, you can access how to do it. All you have to do is spell, and not even spell it correctly. So that creates a lot of opportunity. And, you know, Stitch Fitch, you know, that never could have existed 20 years ago. But now it's a huge business opportunity. So I think the door is wide open, and I think that we just need to encourage each other. We need to support each other. And I think it's a great time to be in business and great time to be a woman in business.
Indeed it is. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Same here.
And you said if people want, and we'll put your information at the end of the program on the credits, but people or organizations like yours can be accessed just through doing a Google search.
Yes, absolutely.
And you said there are places all over the country.
All over the country. So anywhere that you live, you can even put in your zip code and they will, you know, reference the closest CDFI.
And if you have a dream, it can come true. If your dream is to open a new business or whatever, it can happen. And just because the bank said no, there might be a yes out there for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you. We've been talking to Shauna Yeldell. She is the Director of Lending and Operations for, I like this name, Creating Opportunities, Changing Lives, Women's Opportunity Resource Center.
Yes.
Women's Opportunities Resource Center.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Have a great day.